today, if you weren't here last week, we began a new series called Legacy. Legacy, what will we leave behind us? A legacy speaks of leaving behind for those who will follow you. What does our life stand for? What will we leave behind us? What do the people who follow us, are they inspired by our lives? Because listen, all of us leave a legacy. What is the legacy that we will leave? And more importantly, what I'm talking about is leaving a spiritual legacy. In other words, the people who come after us, the people who follow us, the people that come behind us, will they be inspired by our lives? What will our lives speak of? What will we leave behind? Will we faithfully do God's will in our time, in our generation, so that generations who follow us will have the opportunities to know God, to see His works, and to experience the reality of His kingdom here on earth? And so what I am today is challenging us as a church and challenging our day and our time to say, will we be ready to be who God called us to be and step up to the responsibilities of God, what God wants us to be for now and to the generations that follow us, to see God's kingdom made a reality in this earth. See, whether you realize it or not, it is the sacrifices of generations that gone before us that made a way for us to know what we have today. You see, all of you here today, you are experiencing the benefits of generations that have gone before you because the building that you're in, the seats that you're sitting in, represent the sacrifices of others who gave to make this place a reality. And the question is, will we take the legacy that they have handed down to this time and build upon it God's destiny for the future of this place? Or will we kick back and take for granted the sacrifices of those who have gone before us and not do what God's calling us to do in our generation? Because I am deeply indebted to this understanding that all that we are today is because people gone before us. People made everything that we have today a possibility. Now to do honor to the legacy of our past is to leave a legacy behind us to God's generation, to God's purpose and plan in this generation, in this time. What is God saying today? Because you see, guys, it's kind of been that way in the kingdom of God. One of the fascinating realities, during the Great Depression here in the United States of America, the Church of Jesus Christ in the city of Los Angeles, under the leadership of a woman named Aimee Semple McPherson, during a Great Depression, built a building to the glory of God in the middle of LA called Angelus Temple. It was so packed with people. Again and again, so many people came to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior in that hour and in that day. And the people of God, despite the conditions of all that was happening around them, arose under a vision to see God's kingdom a reality in their day. During that time, see, Aimee Semple McPherson, she was a real pioneer, an innovator. She used to do, sermons that were, acted out. She was the first one. In fact, long before what we know is Hollywood and all the rest of that, they came and got inspiration from the people of God because they wanted to know how she was telling such a compelling story, not just with her words, but all that happened out of her church. And the fascinating thing of how many people's lives were touched, healed, delivered, people brought into the kingdom. And it was fascinating, but here's the deal. Did the generations after understand the reason, what God had done in that generation? See, what so often happens is one generation will arise and build something to the glory of God. And then the ones that come behind them, will they follow on? Will they take for granted what has been handed to them? Or will they hear God in their generation, in their time, and arise to leave a living legacy and build on what was before to continue perpetually into the generations to come? And so what I want to talk us through today, I want to see two parts. And really, I'm sharing from my heart today because here's the deal. Two people I thought of. It's in your notes. It's in their end. But first is Moses, because Moses had a calling from God not only to deliver the people of God out of the land of captivity, because why? The people of God, the nation of Israel, had found themselves in slavery in Egypt. And no longer were they living up to all that God intended and planned for them to achieve. And so God called Moses, and more than just delivering the people out of Egypt. Moses had an assignment from God. And that was to do this, to build a tabernacle, a place, a meeting place where the people of God, not just in his generation, but for the generations to come, to hand down a faith, to hand down a legacy of where people could connect with God. And so Moses was given this task. And what was fascinating was, when Moses was leading the people out of captivity, God prospered what was once a slave nation. Now that they were to embody what God's purpose was in their generation, and God prospered them. And what have I always told you? Prosperity has a purpose, guys. Prosperity always has a plan from God's point of view, because God wants his people blessed. But why does God bless his people? What have I taught you for so many years? Why are we blessed? To be a blessing. And when God led the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt, he instructed them to go to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians poured out upon them their gold, their silver, their clothing, all the valuable things that they held in the land of Egypt. They freely gave them to the people of Israel as they departed out of the land of Egypt. And why? Why did God do all that? Because God had a plan in mind. In fact, in the book of Exodus, listen carefully. You can turn there if you want. Very easy point to find, because the very first book of the Bible is the book of Genesis. The second book is the book of Exodus. And listen, Exodus 35, God gave instruction to Moses. And look at what he said to him. In Exodus 35, verses 4 and 5. If you want to follow along, or it'll be on the screen as well, look at what it says. Moses said to the whole Israelite community, "This is what the Lord has commanded. From what you have, take an offering for the Lord." And notice what he said next. Everyone who is what? Willing is to bring to the Lord an offering of gold and silver and bronze and on. Listen, God didn't make this an obligation. God designed and desired that this would be something they would be willing to do. The command was, build this tabernacle, and then ask my people if they would see what I'm doing, and if they would willingly provide for the opportunity of making this a reality in the earth. And so then look at this in verse 21. It goes on to say, and everyone who was, listen again, willing and whose heart moved them came and brought an offering. Notice, God didn't make this obligatory. God said to the people, this is what I want to do. Now, provide the opportunity for them to join with me in this. And so it says again, and everyone who was willing, whose heart moved them, came and brought an offering to the Lord for the work on the tent of meeting and for all its service and for the sacred garments. See, from God's point of view, God has always wanted it to be a free will thing that comes from the heart. An expression of love, an expression of gratitude, a willingness to see what God wants to have done in a generation, and the willingness to sacrifice to make that a reality on the earth. And then so look at what happened. This is fascinating. You flip ahead one chapter in Exodus 36. It goes to say this in verse 4. Look at this. And so all the skilled workers who were doing the work of the sanctuary left what they were doing and said to Moses, look at what they came to him and said, the people are bringing more than enough for doing the work the Lord commanded to be done. In other words, the people responded so astoundingly that they brought more than was necessary to do. And so what did Moses do? Look at this. If this wasn't written in the Bible, I would be shaking my head going, you got to be kidding me. Okay, but look at verse 6. And Moses then gave an order, and they sent the word throughout the camp. No man or woman is to make anything else an offering for the sanctuary. And so the people were restrained from bringing more, because they had already had more than enough to do all the work. You see, the people heard what God wanted to do and freely, willingly, and generously responded to what God did. In fact, Guys, I never really heard anybody tie these together, but I've come to understand this about God. You wonder why. See, the people rose up. God had a need. This is what I want to do in the earth. And he desired that it be something that the people do willingly as their heart moved them to do. And they so responded to meet God's need. Do you ever wonder why God so lavishly for 40 years provided for the nation of Israel where they lacked nothing? Through all their time in the wilderness, that they never lacked for anything. Where even there was a limitation for natural resources, God moved heaven and earth to meet the need of the people. Why? Because they willingly met God at doing what God desired to be done in their generation. God responds on these fronts. See, to every action, there's always an alternative reaction. It is how God created the earth. It's called the law of sowing and reaping. But God's response back is always greater when a generation recognizes that their sacrifices make the kingdom of God a reality in the earth, because now there would be a place for the people of God to meet. Now there would be a place that God designed where people's spiritual realities can be taught, met, and all of this can happen. And so God met them in ways. And see, that became the generation. But you know what? The generations that followed, when they went into when they finally went into the promised land, the tabernacle found a place that it no longer was mobile anymore. No longer was it doing. But that generation didn't understand what was to be built upon what had happened before. And the worship of God actually decreased in the nation of Israel because they took for granted the sacrifices of those who had gone before them. And it got to the point where the people even despised giving what God, just to make the temple the tabernacle a reality, until the days of the second person that I want to mention to you, whose name was David. See, David longed for this end, because when David arose to become the king of Israel, the very first concern that he has is, where is the Ark of Covenant? Where is the place where God's presence dwells? And he said, I will make the city of Jerusalem the new capital of the nation of Israel. I will make this place a renown for the sake of my God. I have worked tirelessly to unite his people and to make his name glorious in the earth. And then David longed for this end. He said, why would I dwell in a palace made with hands? Why God lives in a tent. I want to build a temple befitting to my God. See, God never asked him to do that. But God came to David in that end. Do you wonder why the Bible said David was a man after God's own heart? He wanted to see his God glorified. David was not intent to live in a way that he just took for granted what was given to him in generations past. He brought change and revolution to the nation of Israel because you know what? He changed their worship system. So what people didn't take for granted because he brought singing and dancing and the Psalms and all of this and singers and minstrels in the house of God. He built into generations. He heard what God's purpose was in his time. And God came to him and said, David, no, not in your day will this, yes, a temple will be built for my honor. And because you have sought my will, never in the nation of Israel will anyone sit on the throne of Israel that doesn't come directly from your descendants. Jesus came from David's line. And David did the will of God in his generation. And Solomon, his son, arose to build the temple of God. But David prepared all his life for this because it was something that was valuable to him. Now listen to the scripture. Listen to this. In 1 Chronicles 29, in verse 3, when David was nearing the end of his time, and now he's coming to the nation of Israel, and look at what he says to this as they get ready to build the temple for God. He says, besides, in my devotion to the temple of my God, I now give my personal treasuries of gold and silver for the temple of my God, over and above everything I have provided for this holy temple. In other words, David had worked all his life. David had provided all through the reign of his kingdom. He set aside materials. He set aside things for the building of the house of God, the temple that was in his heart. What God had showed him would be the legacy that he was to leave through his sacrificial. Now, he puts skin in the game and says, listen, not only have I provided and worked for this with my hands, but I'm going to write a personal check on this behalf. And then look at this is where David ponies up. Listen. Because it doesn't really matter until you got skin in the game, until you actually understand the sacrifices. David's about to write the check, and look what he writes a check for. It says this in verse 4. 3,000 talents of gold of Ophir, and 7,000 talents of refined silver for the overlaying of the walls of the building, for the work of gold and silver work, and for all the work to be done by the craftsmen. Now, who is willing? Notice what he said. He's about to offer this. He said, this is the vision of what God wants done. Do you see it, people of Israel? Because I'm willingly giving now out of my personal accounts. And he asked the rest of them, who willing to consecrate themselves to the Lord to this day? Now let me help you with this, kind of my personality. I ran the statistics on this. Because a talent weighs about 75 tons. Okay, so I did all the math and all the rest of it. So because as of Friday of this last week, an ounce of gold was selling for, on the commodities market, $1,312 an ounce. Okay, so when you do the calculations, and I did it for silver as well. So if you want to know how much did David pony up, how much did he give out of his personal account for the building of the temple? Here's what it would be in today's times: $5 billion. That's B, not M. B, billion. Now, here's the deal. How did David come across $5 billion? He was a shepherd boy at his youth. God prospered him, right? See, God don't have a problem with prospering people. When you have the heart of God, see, David was able to express a portion of what God had blessed him with. He understood because his heart was for his God. And he gave it, and then he said to the people, listen, this is what God wants to do. Whoever has a willing heart, let them give to the purpose of God in this generation. So if you're taking notes, listen to me. Listen. This is the main point of today. God has always worked through a willing and generous people to accomplish his will on earth. God has always worked through a willing and generous people to accomplish his will on earth. And so you and I must understand, what is the legacy of Vertical Church? You see, when I took over as senior pastor, what I could not ever come to understand was this: we had to do honor to the legacy of all that had come before us, which means that you can never become complacent. You can never sit back and say, the sacrifices that went to make what was possible today, what is God saying now in this time? What is God's destiny for us? And we must recognize that to do God's will in these days, we must hear and recognize, how do we build upon these realities? And so what I'm going to share with you is what I know and understand to be the future of Vertical Church. I'm going to get very intimate and personal with you because this is something so personal in my heart. But what I know to be the legacy of Vertical Church. But how will it be accomplished? How will any of what I'm about to share with you happen? Only when people who have a willing heart to recognize what God wants done in this hour, to respond like people and prior generations have responded, to recognize that present day sacrifices are always what necessary to make a legacy possible for those that would come after us. Because one of the things that I recognized, that we had a responsibility to build a lasting legacy. We could not sit back and ever create this place as a monument that spoke of something of the past. But we needed to be relevant to the current needs of what God is doing today. Like David in his generation, to say, how do we do honor to what God wants done in the future, is to recognize this responsibility. And so what I came to realize is this, because why? What have I told you guys? That we recognize what's important to heaven is that how I pray for this place. You see, I pray in this sanctuary often because how I pray is this. I pray for all the people who are presently sitting in these seats, that each and every one of them would mature and be everything that God designed them to be in this generation. That we would mature and be more and more like Jesus in our words, our actions, our attitudes, all that we say, all that we do, all that our lives communicate. But yet I also pray as well for all the seats that are yet not full again and again and again, because here's what's something that drives me internally. This is the way I have privately been praying lately, that what Jesus' blood that was spilled at Calvary, that his blood would be satisfied. In other words, everything that he gave. See, from heaven's point of view, God is not willing that any would perish. And so I have refused to allow us to ever let the gravitational pull of Vertical Church just be about us. Just be about the saved. And forget the people that yet need to come to know Jesus. The people that yet need to understand that we would rise up and be a people that would understand that the heart of God is that we would be out in that place compelling people to come. Recognizing that it will never be satisfied until all the people in your family, all the people in your neighborhoods, all the people in your workplaces, all the people in your communities know Jesus and who he is and what he's did and the sacrifice that made what you and I can sometimes take for granted possible for us. We need to make possible for everyone. So if you're filling in the blanks, that's why the first reality of the future of Vertical Church is multi-site campuses. What do I mean by that? Multiplying what we are doing here in neighborhoods and areas, because one of the things I've come to realize, right where we live out here in the Northeast, not everybody's into a big facility to come to. But we are going to make this a reality in multiple areas all over this state. And why a multi-site reality? Because one local reality can then pump out to all the rest of these places. One graphic arts department, one creative arts department, one area centralized can support and help so that it can grow and thrive, reaching more and more and more people. And that's why I spent the time to build a team around me that understood that it was necessary to have the right people to build the leadership necessary. Okay? Why did it take a year in my search for a worship pastor? Because I knew God had a ram in the thicket. I knew that God would have a person that understood the leadership and necessity of what it would take to not just build an awesome experience for us, but to multiply that reality, because we would need multiple efforts to be able to accomplish what God is calling us to in this generation and in this time, and to multiply his kingdom, to see the blood of Christ satisfied, to see the kingdom of God grow in this area. We're not everything to everyone, but here's what we see. That's why we say at Vertical Church, we see ourselves, this is the vision of this place, a multicultural, multi-generational, life-giving church that welcomes unchurched people. We have a primary focus and an intentionality to understand that the people who don't yet know Jesus, we're not building places that are just for the saved, that people can escape the world that we're in, but our call is to be salt and light. In other words, we need to get out among the reality of where we most are needed and be Jesus to the people that most need us in these ends, and to multiply his kingdom and to create it. Because why the multi-site model? Because it's the most efficient, it's the most cost effective, and we can do it, I believe, with excellence, because with the right leadership and the right abilities, we can glorify Jesus and make everything he's given us work at its maximum benefit. That's the thing. So listen, first site, multi-site campuses, second reality. Second reality at Vertical Church is, well, I've already come to recognize its name, the New Haven Dream Center. The New Haven Dream Center. What is the New Haven Dream Center? See, I've already written, what you got to realize, can I be really, really personal with you? I'm going to be totally transparent. Okay, last year, I turned 50. Okay? I'll be very frank, I didn't handle that real well. People come to this point, and everybody deals with it. Some people hit it in their 40s, some people in their 50s. Here's the deal. Because I started to look at a different paradigm. I didn't realize that it's all just what's before me. I started to also recognize, how much time do I have left? I started to be conscious of this end, that what God had called me to do and the things that were in my heart, that I needed to start to build for now and into the future generations long after I'm gone. Long after these ends, what's the legacy that I am to leave in these ends? Because God has put things in my heart that have been there for a long time. And now, these are the responsibilities. That's why the Lord was like, no, you need to start now. Guys, things I'm talking to you about, I've already been working on for over a year. Do you know the New Haven Dream Center, I wrote out the vision. Okay, because the Bible says write the vision down. Make it plain upon the tables. You see, the fact of the matter is, what is it? Out of the ashes of human tragedy, we know this. We want to reconnect people to a living God who will allow them a second chance, a fresh start. Out of all, that Jesus is the same, and he gives beauty for ashes. And whether it's drug rehabilitation, whether it's transitional housing for the homeless, whether it's a mobile food feeding reality to the people who are in need, but to the least of these. We are called to be Jesus in this generation, not with our words alone, but with our very lives. Because to be salt, you got to get out on what's corrupt. You got to get out on what's hurting. The only way to heal what is hurting is to get involved in it. And Jesus, the people that were far away from God were attracted to him. Because he knew he wanted them to be around them, and they knew it. And listen to me. Too long has the church wanted to minister from a safe place. And they want to help the people that are out there with our words and not our lives. We got no skin in the game. We got no reality. You know, how are we going to do something like this? It takes a boatload of money. Here's the reality. The New Haven Dream Center, I never believed would always just be a vertical church reality. My intent, my vision, I saw this as a cooperative effort of the churches of this region to come together for this purpose, to make Jesus known. But vertical church, because God's blessed us, will be the spearhead behind it. This is a part of my responsibilities to pioneer and to make this a reality and to work cooperatively on these fronts to help people who have experienced the pain of our present life and stop feeling that we have somehow a right to look down on the people who have been trashed by the world that we live in, but to recognize we're called to be Christ. Jesus met people right where they were at. He went to the house of Matthew when none of the religious people. See, in that day, the Pharisees represented, they thought God to the people, but they didn't want to get around what was unclean. They didn't want to dirty themselves with that. These were publicans and sinners. Like somehow they had to get their act together before they could come to the house of God when God wanted the doors wide open to say, this is a house for all people. The brokenness of this present world can only be healed by a God who loves you, who gives you what you don't deserve. That's the message of the cross. Jesus came for what was fallen, for what was broken. He went about doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil. And here's what I'm tired of. You want to get my pet peeves? What I'm tired of is the church world, people that are in the, where's the power of God? Where's the power of God? You know, my question is, where's the compassion of God? Because when I read the Bible, when I see Jesus, I find that his miracle power, his Holy Ghost reality to people always flowed on the streams of compassion, until compassion is moving in your heart that you're willing to identify with people that are nothing like you and love them and do for them and do for the least of these. You have never shown the compassion of God. And that's why the Dream Center is to allow the opportunity for people to dream again. People who have understood the pain of this present age and what the cross is all about. Because sometimes in our insulated world, we forget why he came. We forgot the sacrifice of the God who became human, who was touched in every way with the feelings of our infirmities, and that our responsibility is not to be the judge of the world, but to be the ones that come to bring salvation, to bring hope, to restore dignity to people who've been ravaged through the sin of this world. And so the New Haven Dream Center is the opportunity to give people a chance to dream again. The opportunity to mobilize, listen to me, an army of volunteers. How will the organization operate? Not all paid positions, because guys, if you got to be paid to do it, then it ain't flowing on the roans of compassion. See, that's what we believe. I've always believed this. It always starts with a strong and vibrant local church reality, because the local church is the hope of the world. And what have we said to you? See, my prayer for the people of Vertical Church was that we would represent Jesus. And how do we take people through the transformational process? We tell you every week. We inspire a love for God through our weekend celebrations. We build life-giving relationships through our small groups. We help people discover the redemptive purpose through our growth track, and then we empower people to fulfill His purpose through our dream team. And I have told you again and again, the dream team needs to get beyond just the walls of this place and to be Jesus out into the waste places and all of the areas where there is human need screaming at us. We need to rise up and be Jesus in this hour. See, it's building that linkage. It's building that understanding that this is where the volunteers can use their time, their talents, and their treasures to be Jesus to the least of these. To allow what God is doing and working in their heart to find expression, to build the lives of people, and never recognize that the hurts of others are our job to try to ascertain why they're there. The question is simply this: where will they go? What hope will you restore? And what life will you give? That's what the New Haven Dream Center represents. And that's why it's linked entirely on that front. Because of whether any other church shows up with volunteers, I'm believing an army of them are going to rise up out of Vertical Church and say, you know what, I'm here. I'm going to take care of, because see, I see in that place, a place where it can house trafficked women right here in this state. Okay, a place to provide, transitional housing for homeless people. A place to provide opportunities for at-risk kids with all of the junk. I held myself. I'm pretty good this way, because I wanted to say a worse word than that. And I caught myself, okay? That the enemy has thrown at our young people. You can sit around and you can look down a pointy finger and judge other people, but the fact of the matter is, when will your heart break like heaven broke that didn't come? Jesus came and gave it all, guys. And that's what our job is to make a way home for those that have been broken because of sin, to provide hope again. Thirdly, and this links with that end, is to create a ministry training school. A ministry training school. And why is that important? See, never in my heart, years ago, this has been in me for years, but never in the traditional setting of a Bible school. Because I found there was a fault line with the Bible school. I'm not here to disparage anything, but here's what I found, because I've been at this for a long time. Okay? I found that people who went to Bible school got a lot of theological training and knew nothing about how to minister to people. They didn't know how to care for people. They wanted to tell everybody what was wrong and how to straighten out their lives with any practical experience about how to care for people, how to get involved, and how to actually build anything that will minister life to people. And see, it's not about highbrow theology. It's about caring for people right where they're at. So we want to train volunteers. We want to train people who have the aspirations to serve God even vocationally. But whether it's through volunteerism or whether it's through vocational end. But you see, our ministry training school, we want to build real relationship with churches all across this region where they would trust us, to train their people, to send them back, to help them build their churches, to practically train them in ministry so that they would know whether it's creative arts, whether it's video, whether it's caring for people, whether it's in the Dream Center or any other of the things that God has given us to do, is to give practical training to people to actually know how to care for people that are in need. So a ministry training school. And see, part of it, if you go to the ministry training school, you're going to have to do a term at the Dream Center. Because if you don't care about the people that have been ravaged by life, you're not fit for ministry. Sorry. That's how I feel about it. Okay, maybe it's my opinion, but I'm going to tell you this. If ministry is embodied in Jesus, how can you ever look and realize that Jesus didn't care about that end? That's why I'm tired of people say, well, why does the church use humanitarian things? Anybody can do that. That's what I've heard. I've heard people tell me that. Anybody can do that. But obviously the followers of Jesus didn't think that way. Because the apostles in Acts chapter 6 the deacon's ministry was born over what reality? They were caring for the widows and the most vulnerable of society. And those were the ones that were closest to Jesus. So here's the deal, guys. I do believe that the power of God needs to operate in our day, no doubt about it. Because the only way that human lives are transformed is by the power of God. But unless it's delivered through compassion, you can forget it, because I have seen so many failed attempts at that end. And so here's the deal. Ministry training school is to teach people the heart of what ministry is really all about. It is caring for people who are far away from God. Why? Because that's what God cares for. That's what God believes in. That's why God sent his son into this world. It's never allowing the idea that ministry is about insulating myself from the world and living in our scared little bomb shelters waiting for Jesus to come and condemning the world that we live in. But the heart of God is this. He sent his son not into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. That we are to be salt and light. Guys, what have I been telling you at Vertical Church? This is the reality of who we are. And that may not be an embraced value by everybody that's in the body of Christ today, and I'm not here to disparage anybody, but if you want to know the heartbeat, what Vertical Church represents, this is the reality of why we're here. Because why do we gather every week? Is it all about us? Is it all about how to enrich our lives? How we build bigger bank accounts, bigger houses, all this? Is it about laying up for ourselves treasures on earth? Or is it truly about laying up for ourselves riches in heaven by giving our lives for the purposes of heaven? Because we are a people who do not live for the short term, but we live for eternity. We understand that the value systems that drive us is the realization that because God wants this to happen. See, guys, why am I driven by these ends? Because I know that God holds me responsible for these things. And however God chooses to make them happen, all I know is this: they will happen. Because I will not let go until I understand. How God brings about the realities is God's business. My job as the leader is to give the picture, to give the vision, to help people to understand, and to all the people that will see it, that will believe in it, and allow God to move in their heart, that somehow, some way, we will work on this, because it's beyond a person. It's beyond a personality. It can only happen through a body called the body of Jesus Christ. When all of us see and understand what the call is to this generation, to the legacy that we are to leave behind, that's the only way these become reality in this day. And the last one is this: is a global missions plan. A global missions plan. Early on in my walk, when God revealed the heartbeat of the local church, the one he chose to reveal to me in such intimate detail, I'm back in the 80s right now, is that he showed me the church in Antioch. And why was that important? Because the church of Antioch was a multicultural church. Because at the church of Antioch, you go down through the list, it was a multicultural church. But you know the other distinction of the church of Antioch? They also worked as a team, which is why I work as a team. Because I didn't want to build Vertical Church on a personality. It's built on a group of people that understand that this is the plan, this is the purpose, this is the will of God to this generation. But the other thing about it is they were a missional church. They understood, because out of that church was birthed the ministry of the Apostle Paul and Barnabas. And here's the deal. A global missions plan that has been in my heart for years is that one of the things that we're responsible to do at Vertical Church is not just minister to our region and to our locality, which is important, which we will do, but also to partner together strategically, to work with what God is doing in certain spots, not all around the world, certain spots around the world. Guys, it is why I traveled this year, which is what was more on you. Why did I go to India? Why did I go to Burma? Why did I go to China? Why did I do these things? Because I have already been laying the groundwork. See, I've been working with leaders right now of major missions organizations to build a reality where we want to take the peoples of Vertical Church who have willingness in their heart to allow their time, their talents, and their treasures to be used to come alongside what God is doing in parts of the world and help those to leverage it and build the kingdom of God in a global responsibility, to see Jesus made known in other places around our world. See, whether it's dentists or doctors or ministry people, whatever the needs are, that we would take what we know and come alongside and sacrifice, whether it's a short-term missions trip. But see, here's the deal, guys. When Vertical Church reaches its apex, when we're at our mature point, 1% of our congregation will be serving long-term overseas in other nations. Because it's a part of the strategy. It's a part of the vision. It's providing. We're doing the back work on this to make it possible so that people here would say, you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice a week of my time. I'm willing to give my time, my talents, and my treasures to come alongside and to partner. And here's the deal, to serve, not to think like we know what we're doing, but to take what we know and serve the needs of people in other nations. To come along the indigenous peoples that were working in places where our skills, talents, and abilities could make an absolute astronomical difference in training, in helping, in loving, and showing Jesus to the least of these. See, all of this, how will any of this happen? See, it's way beyond me, guys. And it's way beyond one. See, the key is this. That's why I've always understood. It's going to be a vibrant, large reality of what God's called vertical church to be, because there's no way you can support and found all of those realities on the simple points of just running a local church. The fact is, when people see, when they understand that the way that that happens is through the willingness and the generosity of this generation to rise up and say, God, I see what you're wanting to do. And we want to make a legacy of the glory of Jesus to me and to the kids that will come after us, to the generations that follow us. That these are the points that we need to build on our past and not sit back on our laurels and become complacent. Oh, we have a building. We've done this. Awesome. That's great. And now, what will we build on it? See, one man lays a foundation and another builds thereon. The reality of what God's called for me to do as the leader of this organization is to lead us into the future of our legacy. How will any of that be a reality? It is only when the people of Vertical Church see that God's called us to something bigger than ourselves. It's beyond our comfort zones. It's our willingness to do our part, to say, God, here am I. Use me. Take my life. Take my time. Take my talents. Take my treasures. Build your kingdom. Let your kingdom be a reality on the earth through my sacrifices. This is what I give myself to.